Us everyone, thanks for watching the Kyokushin Shuffle, and we're on fire, to be honest. So many people to talk to, and so many amazing people answering back and giving me their time. And here is one other. Ladies and gentlemen, he's residing from Geelong. You may have seen him at a lot of tournaments. You may have seen him for many, many years conducting the best tournaments in Australia as such and in Victoria. But Shihancho Gary Vickers, it's an honour talking to you. How are you?
Well, Sensei Patrick, I'm well, thank you. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you again for your time. And for those to appreciate, Shihancho has made a mighty effort in his technology education in the last half an hour or so, but we have definitely got him on it, which is an honour. So thank you for that.
A pleasure.
Shihancho, you're in Geelong. We're just going through a bit of COVID as Australia as such. But how are you going, and how are things at your end at the moment?
Yeah, look, thanks, Sensei. I'm doing well. My wife's doing well. We're lucky. We haven't caught it or anything. We're just really bored at the moment because we've been in lockdown for a long time, and you can only train so much in your living room. So we're a bit limited, but we're keeping the faith and just keeping on going.
Oh, good on you. We all are, and we're nearly there, as they say. And
there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Indeed. Well, that's good to hear. And I guess as I do, we've got an hour to enjoy your journey as such and your highlights. And you're definitely someone that I've had the honor of, in tournaments when I get presented, success. Luckily at the end of a tournament, I get to that phase and I get to shake your hand and we have a quick chat and then I move on. And that's probably been, 15 years of my fighting career where I've got to shake your hand and then I just, we move on. But so, we'd love to get to know you a bit more. Love to hear your journeys in Japan and your world tournament. There's a lot we can talk about, so you can angle it in any direction. But the first one to start off is, how did martial arts start in your life, and when did it happen, and why did it happen?
Okay, thanks. Well, it's actually a fairly interesting story because I first started training in 1968. And in those days, I was a mad surfer. And I surfed for probably 15 years in the end. I was around when Rip Curl and Quicksilver and all those people were formed. And it's actually a little side story. I remember being in the Torquay pub and the guy came in and said, Claw and Singding had just formed this new company. And I said, what is it? And they said, it's called Rip Curl. And I said, that's a shit name. It'll never take off.
How good's that?
So there you go. So anyhow, in those days, my board was 9'6" long. So if you lost it when you're out the back, you had a long swim in and you had to be reasonably fit. So me and a few mates, when we weren't surfing, we went to a gym. So I'm in this gym training one night and a mate of mine says, I've just heard about this new thing. It's called a sauna bath. I said, oh, God, what's that? So you sit in this room full of steam and it draws out all the badness out of your skin. I thought, gee, that's good. So let's go and have one. So the three of us went round and had a sauna bath. And the place where the sauna bath was, luckily for me, the International School of Self-Defence in Little Ryrie Street, Geelong.
All right.
So when we walk in, there's a door open and there's these people running around in white suits and doing all these funny moves. And I looked at them and I said to the guy who actually turned out to be Bill Powell, who probably many people know or have heard of, and, I have to say Bill and I disagreed on many, many things, but to give him his due, there's a lot of people around that wouldn't be anywhere now but for him and his International School of Self-Defence. So he said, that's a karate class. I said, gee, that looks interesting. I might have a go. So I went back the next day, had my first class, and I've been training ever since.
Holy moly.
From day one, just loved it. And in those days, it was like very brutal and very physical and very hard and all that. And we just loved it. We didn't even question why we did things the way we did them. We just did them because that's what everyone else did.
Well, firstly, thank you for that. And more so, congratulations on 50 years plus now of being in martial arts and in Kyokushin as such. And, that's something that's been a passion of mine in reinforcing how legends like yourself have just, given so much to the art, and we have to recognize it in some way. So congratulate you on that, firstly.
Well, thank you very much.
No,
it's one of those, funnily enough, I say to all my people, you know, when I started training, I never had an ambition, you know, to get to a certain level or to do certain things. I just damn well love training and still do. And I just made myself available for any training experience I could get, whether it was a weekend away, beach training, camps or whatever. I was always there, and it just, as I said, just loved it and couldn't get enough of it.
Well, that's unreal because, you know, surfy lad and then combining the pajamas, as they say, into, you know, Kyokushin Karate, the strongest karate. And then, you know, you get your hands dirty. You start to understand, you know, this is a full contact art. It becomes the strongest art in the world. And these lads from Geelong, these surfers as such, you know, how did you I guess in loving the training, what were you loving about the training? The hardness, the toughness, the group, the camaraderie, what was it?
Oh, well, a bit of both, but I'd have to say probably more was just the hardness. It was, you know, every class was really, really hard. You come out of it like, you know, feeling like you'd been through the ringer. And then when we got into the fighting part, you know, the fighting was great. I loved that. I was actually, another little story, I could really kick really high when I first started. But unfortunately, at some stage, I had a bad car accident and broke my pelvis.
Oh my goodness!
When it rejoined, it joined with a slight twist in it and robbed me of the high kick. So, like again, one of the beauties of Kyokushin, you don't necessarily have to have a high kick. So I concentrated on other things. So, yeah, and in those days, I mean, if we did a class like they did back then, now we'd have the police around locking us all up. You know, it was really. Was really unusual to have a class and someone didn't have blood all over them.
Yeah.
But once again, they all came back the next night and did it all again. It was just one of those things. Once it was in your blood, you couldn't get it out. And I think one of my situations was I was married at the time and I was surfing and doing Kyokushin, and my wife turned around and said, "Listen, pick one or the other, but you can't do both because you're never home." And I said, yeah, well, she's right. And luckily for me, I picked Kyokushin because I'm thinking, well, I don't need to worry about the weather or the tides or the swell or whatever. So,
all the sharks
all the sharks.
Jan Jack or down in the bells down there. There's no messing around.
So I made the right call, I think.
Well, yeah, isn't that fascinating though? In respect of your wife giving you a bit of a, hey, hold on a minute, buddy, where are we at here?
Yeah. And if she hadn't said that, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah. So can I ask, and who was the teacher at the time of your progression to
look, funnily enough, in those days, like even in those days, a green belt was very rare. And I remember Bill had a couple of green belts taking classes. One guy's name was Gary Thompson, and another guy's name was Peter Fisher. But the black belts in Geelong that I can remember at that time were a guy called Marcus Shaw. Okay. Who, if you Google him, you might find out he was actually a legendary big wave surfer as well. So we had that connection as well. And he had these really big board bumps on his insteps. And if someone saw him, you would always remember him for that. And the other guy, who again was a very famous guy, was Frank Everett, who eventually moved to Queensland, started Kyokushin on the Gold Coast, and eventually moved to Noosa, and unfortunately passed away a few years ago. And he was just a magnificent human being.
Oh, well, good on you for raising that because I didn't know that he was. So you're saying he was a Geelong lad?
Oh, yeah, he was born and bred in Geelong.
Oh,
and he had he was a gymnasium in Geelong. And I used to go around there and train with him at lunchtimes. Yeah.
Well, for those that aren't aware of Frank Everett and my knowledge in just listening, obviously, he taught the likes of all the hierarchy in Queensland, all the hierarchy.
Yes.
Shihan Cameron, Shihan Trevor Field.
Exactly. Trevor. And even South Australia, I think Mike Manifield trained with him at one stage.
Wow, there's some big names. That's some really cool history there. Thanks for that, letting me know or sharing that bit because what an influence he was to so many as well.
Yes.
So you've got this cool pedigree of lads, respectfully as I put it, going for this Japanese style and cracking into each other like no tomorrow, and like you said, the cops could be over at any time. And then again, respectfully, it's mid 70s or early 70s as such, and then. How did it influence you to again, there's no internet, there's no mobile phones, there's no videos, there's no, rare TV. There's only some. So the vision or the footage and the understanding was either someone flew down from Japan or you flew there at some point. So before getting to your world tournament window, could you share with us how that gap?
Sure. Happy to. So after I got to about green belt or thereabouts, and I were not, along with another number of people, weren't happy with the way things were being run. Okay. And those guys, again, you may recall Brian Ellison.
Yes. Yep.
And a guy named Laurie Lee. Laurie Lee, once again, was an absolute legend of a fighter in Kyokushin in those days. I remember one tournament we were at, he did a Jodo Moshigiri and knocked this guy out. And while we were standing there, we looked down, there's blood coming out of his foot, and the guy's tooth was actually embedded in his instep.
How good's that?
Once again, you couldn't do that sort of stuff these days. But anyhow, so cut a long story short, Brian and Laurie and I formed the Victorian Kyokushin Karate Association in about 1975, and it's been going ever since. So I did my black belt in 1973 in Albert Street, Brunswick, and that hall is still standing. But if you went past it, it looks like it's about due to fall over any moment. But it's still there, and there's still martial arts classes going on in there, I'm told, but not Kyokushin. But in those days, that's where it was. And I remember when I did mine. This is, again, shows you probably the toughness of it all. There was 12 of us, 12 first years.
Yes.
To do the showdown grading. Sensei John Taylor, as he was then, came down to do it with Ivan Zavachanis. And the first thing he did was he walked out the front and he said, looked at us all and said, I can tell you right now, I am not going to, half of you are going to fail. He said, there's no way known I'm promoting 12 people to black belt at one time.
Wow.
And true to his word, half did fail, but luckily I was one of the ones that passed.
Oh, wow. There you have it, though.
So and at the same time, we were also involved in an organisation called FACO, which was the forerunner for the AKF. And in those days, the four main styles were Shotokan, Goju, Watakai, and Kyokushin. And the Kyokushin team, I have to tell you, was always one of the most feared around in those days. We wreaked havoc with a few of the others, but it was all point system, and we used to say, we just use it to perfect our technique so we can get into the knockdown.
Sure.
And then we started to have knockdown tournaments as well, and they just showed us the way to go. Went on and on. I think we had our first knockdown tournament in 1977.
Wow.
They were great days. And in those days, I mean, again, it doesn't happen much these days. But in those days, the tournaments were so big, we used to have them over 2 days.
Yes.
We had the eliminations in one day and the finals and semis in the next day.
Unreal.
And, the people would, and there was some absolutely fantastic fighters, talk about Kyokushin brings out the best in people. Well, it was really a good example of that. So then in 1979, I won the right to represent Australia as part of the Australian team for the second World Championships in Japan.
Unreal. Yes.
Off we went, and we're still, I mean, the trip in those days, I mean, international travel these days, everyone just takes for granted. In those days, it was a really, really, really big deal to go anywhere overseas. And for a karate person, it was even a bigger deal to go to Japan, because you didn't know what to expect, or, strange country and everything. So the World Tournament in itself was fantastic. And I took the opportunity, because we had our airfares paid, to stay over there and train for 3 months at Honbu. And therein, I think, is the biggest thrill of my life, was training with Sosai. I mean, that guy was just an absolute legend, and he could just light up a room. When he came in, it was just a totally different atmosphere. And he was just, fantastic, hard as nails, but fantastic to just be there. And I remember thinking the first time I trained was, here am I, this little third Dan from Australia, over, and there must have been 100 black belts in the class, training with all these people in Japan. It was just surreal.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We haven't deep dived, but, in setting that up for us, You know, again, I always have to raise this, you know, and people probably that listen go, here he goes again. But to respectfully put an hour as such, I'm just keeping the timeline, you know, again towards this. So you go to the second world tournament again. I've shared this with someone else. I think it was with Kancho Jimmy Phillips, and he mentions you a fair bit in
well, Jim and I were in the same team.
Yeah, and again,
and we stayed in Japan together for a while.
Yeah, now in '79, and I'm saying it again, you know, you got lads like me that got to see the footage of all the other pre-world tournaments in readiness to go to a world tournament, where this is just in a nice way. It's insane what you're doing. You're traveling, you're going to the foreign country, you're competing against the best in the world. You know, what is going on here? And then you're going to train with a legend as such that you are familiar with, but others are like, who, what, why? And you get there. Now, I've been fortunate to go to Ikebukuro and be in the Honbu dojo. And now when you got the opportunity to train there, I'm sure you could share a million things here, but the biggest one either in being there, what was your internal goal? You know, like what were you really, you've had the world tournament, you did great. And then what was your internal feeling?
Well, look, it was just to train. All I wanted to do was train in Japan, train under Sosai. And I can tell you now, when I first walked into that dojo, I was absolutely crapping myself. And just as a little offside, when you went there, did you see the door on your left-hand side as you walk in? There's a couple of karate stickers from Australia.
Yes,
I put them there.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
How cool.
So a little known story back in those days, because I mean, Honbu was just absolutely, if I had one wish for all my people, it would be to transport them back there and let them train at Honbu. Because I mean, you had the whole Japanese team training there. There were that many good fighters around. It was just insane. And my first view of Honbu, we're standing at the front door, and the first thing I saw was this little Japanese guy coming down the stairs with blood pissing out of his nose. And I thought to myself, oh God, what am I doing here? We got to be befriended by the Uchideshi, and they tell some really funny stories, but their basic premise was they summed you up the moment you walked in the door. And if you didn't look like you had respect and you were there for the right reasons, they would give you one hell of a time. But, I mean, you still got a hell of a time, but maybe not quite so bad. And also they would then look after you afterwards, you know, take us out for a beer or a meal or whatever after training. And luckily, Tony Bowden, Jim Phillips and I were all classed as okay. Yes. So we got to go out and as well as training, we got to go out and socialise a little bit. And also, Sosai used to eat with the Uchideshi every Friday night. And he would always, if we were standing at the front door, he would always invite all the gaijin to come with him. So luckily we'd get around there. The eating part was sort of funny because the rule over there is you've got to eat whatever's put in front of you before you get any more. And some of the stuff we were eating was a bit suspect, but we got through it. And then Sosai would speak to you, you know, and ask you questions about your country and your family life and all that sort of stuff. So it was just really showing the human side of him as well.
Yeah. And you know, the world tournament is not a part of just, you know, fought in that, no problem. I'm sure you would have come back. Yeah, you would have come back. And then again, I'm alluding to, you know, that all that experience within a 6 to 8 month block coming back to Oz. And now what? What was running through your blood?
Well, I was, I think I was 33 when I was there. So my fighting career was just about at an end. And there were sort of two views, you know, one, I could go in another tournament and put all the stuff I'd learned in Japan to practice, but run the risk of getting a serious injury at that age. So in the end, I thought, you know, I've done my bit. I'd really like to get into officiating.
Okay.
So I came back and started my training as a judge and a referee. Interestingly, when I fought in the world tournament, the last guy I fought was a guy from Lebanon, whose name escapes me at the moment, but Jamal Hayek, his name was. And 50 years later, he is now a branch chief in the same organisation.
Wow.
So how was that for a coincidence?
Yeah.
And he came out to Australia about 3 or 4 years ago, and we shook hands and embraced. And that was the other thing with the tournament. It does show how you can get along with other people from different races, different religious beliefs, all the rest of it. When you're on the mat, you give it 110%. When you're off your mat, you're just another guy, and you feel really good and grateful for the experience. There's no politics or religious garbage in the tournament or when you come off. As Sosai said many times, world peace through Kyokushin.
Well, wouldn't that have been such a, how do you appreciate that now, and in today's day and age, hey, isn't that just unreal? The way they say he was way ahead of his time, and then he
was 20 or 30 years ahead of his time, and even now I get amazed, think of some of the things he did, and you suddenly realise, now I understand why he did that now. It just becomes so clear, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I raised that in one of my other chats again, not sure with, and I think it was with Shihancho Gary, but it was more as he had a magazine, he had the video, the books, and just his way of building and from being in Australia and then Japan, and then did you start to get the books? Were you in Japan getting geese? What was all that? While you're there, what do you do?
I got the books, that was for sure. And look, in those days, one other funny little story there's a halfway. You might have seen it. There's a halfway platform when you're going down to the toilets.
Yes.
Right? On that platform, when I was there were all these parcels wrapped up in brown paper. Now, in those days, you would absolutely kill for a tournament program.
Right.
So I'm looking at it one day, and I just happened to rip a little bit of the paper. So these were all leftover programs from the first World Tournament.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So one day, while I'm sneaking up there when the Uchideshi were looking, I knocked one off and brought it over.
How good's that? You still got it?
I said to myself, now I've got the complete set.
Oh, wow. That's cheeky. Well,
but that was just the sort of attitude, in those days, anything with Kyokushin on it, you were just crazy for it, You would kill for a T-shirt with a kanji or a kanku on it.
Yes, indeed. No, even in 2000, when I went in 2005, and we would go around Ikebukuro or go around the area, I had the naiveness of thinking there would be T-shirts saying Kyokushin all over shops, and in the Budokan shop, it was just a simple thing with a kanji on it, and I'm like, is this it? Yeah. What the heck is this?
Yes, that's exactly right. And Sosai was so well known in Japan. I always remember we could be riding on a train somewhere, and a little school kid, because we had the kanji on, a little school kid would point at us and make a noise like a bull, because everyone knew about Sosai and the bulls. Even when we went to visit his grave in Japan, and I couldn't find it, and I asked these grave diggers where it was. The guy did exactly the same thing. He made bull's horns with his fingers and made a noise and said, he's over there. So that's how famous he was.
And I guess I want to just touch on that, because the emotions I felt when I went to see his grave was unbelievable. How was it for you when you got there? And I
was lucky enough. I went to his funeral. So there was Tony Bowden and I, John Taylor, Howard Lippman, a few other guys. I think we all went to his funeral, and it was that massive. Like the actual parlour where they had the funeral would probably only seat, say, 300 people. Yes. But when you came out, they were lined up for blocks and blocks and blocks. All you could look down the street, all you could see is people 4 abreast, and they all came in, paid their respects, and then they bowed to Mrs. Oyama, Shian Bobby Lowe, and Chian Matsui. So they stood there for all of that time, and it took like hours and hours to get through all these people.
Oh, well, there you go. So were you, you flew you flew when you heard the news, you flew there? That's in 93. Were you there? Yeah.
No, we flew over, especially for the funeral.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So so you were there, and then at his yeah. So when did you go to the graveside as such? Was that?
Oh, that was
our next
trip over. Yeah, we went to we had a branch chiefs camp. We went to that, which was the first one after Sosai had passed, which was great training, but also very upsetting because we all knew that he wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. And so when pre him passing away, you would have attended all the other Mount Mitsumin camps and
yes,
and other future world tournaments. How was all this working for you as such? Were you, because again, we haven't tapped into, obviously you would have had a professional career, family, and all the above. So how was it all approaching prior to him passing? So then we can
so you're right. I had a wife and 3 kids. We separated, and I also had a really good job at the Geelong Harbour Trust. But I had the chance to get out with a golden handshake, and I took it because I wanted to get involved in teaching Kyokushin full time. Yeah. And that was also at the same time I was training to go to Japan for the World Tournament. So I went over there, did the World Tournament, stayed and trained, then came back and started teaching in a little Malib Street dojo full time.
So with your trips to Japan pre Mas Oyama, like in getting to know, oh wow, there's the fighting side, but now look at this, the camaraderie, the mateship, the seminars, the camps, the extra knowledge, this Shihan, and again, back then Shihans were very rare as well as senseis. So, how was all that going?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough when I was over there, he had the winter camp at Mount Mitsushima. That in itself was a hell of an experience because, we're 5 o'clock in the morning, we're kneeling in the snow with Sosai at the front. I remember your knees and your legs just went numb and you got pins and needles in your leg. I remember a couple of guys actually passed out. But it was such a test, and then we train all day. And then if you look down Mount Mitsushima, we ran down the mountain, down that windy road to the bottom, turned around and ran straight back up again. That was the training session for one of the afternoons. And we're all another little side note. So when we get there, you're all broken up into groups because you're in a room with 6 or 7 or 8 Japanese. And of those, one guy is the head of the room, does everything else. So I'm in a room, and the head of my room was one guy named Akiyoshi Matsui.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So, and we knew him from training anyhow. So we were in there, and it was just again really hard. But just as long as you kept going and didn't shirk. I mean, for example, they had the last day you have waterfall training. So you're down the bottom. There's this big waterfall and a sort of a very small pond at the bottom of it. And you got to jump in there, stand under the waterfall, do some training, do a bit of sparring in the pond, and then jump out. It's -2 degrees as air temperature. The water's like almost ice, and you're just absolutely freezing. But Sosai was there. You just did it and loved it.
Yeah. Nowadays, you're kidding. Nowadays, you go into Torquay Beach. Oh, well, what's going on here?
Exactly. And one of the things I discovered with Sosai, and I understand where he's coming from, no one could ever impress him.
I see.
Because if he said, you were really good, he's sort of playing favourites.
Yeah.
So he was always one, no matter what anyone did, it was always just he would never say, oh, that's really good or whatever, just okay. Yeah. And one time before we left, he's got a audio crew around. He's going to make sounds of training and breaking boards and all that sort of stuff. So we're down the bottom dojo and we're breaking boards, having a good old time, and they're recording all this stuff. And there's this one black belt Japanese. He's probably 16 or 17, but really muscular, and he takes off his gi top, and Keiji Sanpo, who was the head Uchideshi at that stage, is going to break this bit of 3B2 timber over his arm. And it's like not smooth. It's really rough. So he gets there and goes whack, and nothing happens except there's a couple of little bits of dots of blood come on this guy's arm from the rough timber. So, cut a long story short, he tried it 3 times, wouldn't break. The poor guy's still standing there, rock solid. Sandbag grabs the wood, looks at everyone, says, "I fix," because he didn't speak much English in those days. He goes outside the room and you hear, he sort of saw cut it, come back and it broke the next time.
There you have it. Oh, I could imagine there's many of them. Hey, thank you for sharing that. That's very cool. So,
my pleasure.
There's some fun side to what was happening, but obviously the sad loss of Sosai Mas Oyama within that 93, and then things change, don't they, Shihancho? Yeah. Things change around the world, and you know, how did you all adjust to it from there after such an influential?
Oh, look, it was a really terrible time. And I'm not going to get into the politics or the will or whatever. Suffice it to say, there was a dispute about the will. People were going this way, that way, whatever. Yes. And in the end, from memory, the 3 main groups came to Australia, and each branch chief had to pick which group he wanted to go with. We picked one, and from day one, we weren't happy. It was just one of those things we expected certain things, didn't get them. And as time went on, I got more and more unhappy to the stage where at one stage I was seriously thinking about not training or going to another style or whatever, just to get away from it all. Wow. And right at almost the death knell when I was going to make this decision, we got a fax from Kancho Matsushima.
All right.
Saying, I'm going to form an organisation. Do you guys want to be in it?
Yeah.
And we said, yeah, you bet we did. And off we went. He came out with a couple of other Japanese. We met. We did a tournament. We saw, how we were, what we were doing, all that sort of thing. He's more than happy to have us in his organisation. And the rest is history, as you say. We developed, from where we were at. Australia was the first country to join his organisation. So there was Australia and Japan, and then from there it spread to, I think he's got 45 countries now. So
and
that made me happy, and it gave me more drive to keep going and doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, some good reassurance, I guess, is the word at that time.
And look, I always said to each their own. Other guys want to go different ways. I have no problem with that. I've got no problem with anyone doing anything they want. My only issue's ever been, if you're in one organisation and you leave to go somewhere else, that's fine, but don't badmouth the organisation you're coming from.
After 30 years, of being under Sosai and the growth and the all the goodness that came from it, and then this conflicting situation with so many friends and so many mates and mateship, having to decide where to go. Such a tough decision, and like you just gestured, as long as no one badmouth that, you can't control everything.
Yeah, and good luck to them. If they're getting what they want, then that's fantastic. I mean, for example, another little side note, the guy that I shared a flat with in Ikebukuro when I was training is a guy named Miguel Soderquist.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look him up, he's now a 7th dan with Shin Kyokushin.
Okay, yeah.
So there's connections all over the place,
Yeah.
No matter what organisation you're in, a good martial artist is a good martial artist and deserves respect.
Good one. And back in Oz, and now you got some reassurance and some guidance and direction with Matsushima and his name and so forth, and then the growth of the Australian or VKKA just continues, and you've developed so many strong practitioners and students, and then how are you foreseeing, I guess, when this is occurring? Because everyone has their opinions and views now, and it's not just the one umbrella. Yep. You're the leader of it as such. How were you, funneling it, to a positive way?
Well, I've always said from the outset, my entire aim is to give my guys exposure to as much as I can, as far as training and tournaments and camps and everything else goes, and try and pass on the knowledge that I have for the next generation. Because unfortunately, we're now looking at, in years to come, there's going to be no one around that can say, I trained with Sosai. We're all going to be gone, and then everyone else is going to be following on. And I'm pretty sure Sosai had the same idea. You light the spark, and you hope the spark will continue when you're not around. And I've been really lucky. The guys in my branch have been fantastic. It's like we're really like a family. In fact, funnily enough, the first tournament Kancho Matsushima came out to, he actually said that we're all standing around the bar, and he actually said, this is the Vickers family. And that name actually stuck to the extent that in China, 2 years ago, I got presented with a plaque to commemorate my 50 years from Kancho. And part of it said, on behalf of the Vickers family branch. So
how good's that?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And everyone has the same experience. You have that camaraderie. You have the just the feeling of you're a group and you're all going in the one direction. And look, I've been really lucky too to have some brilliant fighters come through my branch, and nothing gives me greater pleasure than to see a good fighter do well. But I also get a real lot of pleasure out of seeing the other guys that aren't such good fighters maybe, but get in and have a go and actually make something of themselves. And they come off the mat and you can see, even though I lost, I did really good. So you don't have to be a champion fighter to be well liked and respected. You've just got to get in there and have a go. And there's been umpteen dozen examples of that over many years. I always remember one of my first fighters was a girl named Avril Gill from Terrelgan. And I remember going up there to do a grading at one stage, and there was 3 or 4 girls all around the same level, and they're all going for green belt, I think. And Avril was just, I don't know, someone had pushed the button. She just got it that day. And I remember coming back, and I rang one of my senior instructors and said, mate, I've just seen the best green belt in the branch. She was just electric. And went to, again, luck. If she had started training 3 or 4 years earlier, there's not a doubt in my mind she would have been a world champion. But she just over that age where she couldn't quite get there with the younger good fighters. And then you've got guys now like Samuel Shields and Michael Dent, David Weir-Smith, and those sorts of guys. Jesus, I mean, the talent those guys have got is just amazing, absolutely amazing.
Well, you've just, segued something nicely there in that I haven't probably asked anyone with the experience like yourself. How do you see and how are you seeing is it an enjoyment to see the quality of, I mean, those 3 lads, absolute quality. I've had 2 of them on. I've asked Sam to be on as well, but we'll catch him later. But, those as an example and the quality of, the last 10 years or so, how are you seeing it?
Yeah, I think, again, those people that I named and many others, they're basically the same as me. They just love training. Everything you have, they're always there. It doesn't matter that they had to work or they had something on or a family thing or whatever. They give that up, come to training, and they get the rewards. And they have ambitions, and I'm happy that my branch is able to help them achieve those goals. And look, technique-wise, I mean, there's always the argument, who was best, the guys in the 70s or the guys now. And I would have to say it'd be one hell of a fight. I reckon now, because the guys in the old days were more stand toe-to-toe and slog it out, just power and strength. These guys now are more technicians. And, as you know, Samuel and Michael and David can take your head off quick as look at you if you give them the chance. Yeah. So, very interesting, and they're doing the Kyokushin way. I mean, what more can you ask? I mean, you saw that last fight with Samuel at Shihancho Judd's event. Yes. I mean, you travel the world over to see a better fight than that.
Yeah, no, and fantastic you raising that, and that's exactly right, and that's why I thought I'd ask, to get your view and opinion on it, because we have to, for the listeners, listening to this, watching it, that's a big passion that a lot of the, again, I've competed in when I fought 15 years straight, and and I fought in all your tournaments as such in those years. And yeah, it was, you know, you gave us a platform. You gave us again, this is a fighting conversation at the minute, but there was a platform for us to achieve, to grow, to get better, to compete against others. You know, yes, we were from a different group via Shihan Billy and so on, but you welcomed us, and we always respected that.
Yeah, look, and again, back in the bad old days or the good old days, whatever you want to call them, gee, I remember in the 70s and early 80s, if it wasn't an VKKA fighter that was going to win, we were like, you know, almost ready to rip our bloody guts out and do harikiri. Nowadays, it doesn't matter. A good fighter, as I said, is a good fighter is a good fighter. Whoever wins, they're the best fighter on the day, and that's just fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's cool because, again, you continue to front up with the tournaments each year, and I'm sure, you know, next year it'll just continue on with VKKA.
Yeah, my guys often ask me, you know, can I go in this or can I go in that? My answer's always been the same. I would never ever stop anyone from competing in anything if that's what they want to do. My only proviso is that's okay, you do that, but you got to be in our tournaments as well.
Yeah,
and that's fine. You know, I said to someone the other day, you know, why the hell would I stop someone from taking an advantage of having to fight here, there, or everywhere?
No, fair enough. Shihancho, you know, again, the journey continues on, and you know, I've asked some others, you know, the influential figures or mentorships, or, you know, guys like myself, you know, I'm 40 next year, you know, we look up to, you know, our Shihans and our Hunchies and so forth, and we have to appreciate, you know, the flame that they've held for us and so forth. Who and how and what continues to make you be, you know, influential in what's going on?
Well, firstly, there's Kancho Matsushima, who is the most fantastic leader I've come across. And not only that, but as in many Kyokushin organisations, a very personable and likeable bloke as well, who will go out of his way to explain things to you and teach you properly. And when you look back into the history of it, look back in the early books, there's always photos of Kancho when he was younger training with Sosai. And in fact, when we train and we get to doing Sushio, he always has a little laugh and says, you know, Stan says, I know Sushio better than everyone, because when that book was done, it took me 100 times to get all those photographs. So he's an inspiration and just a continual drive for me, because I love being part of his organisation, and we're all and yeah, within that organisation, there's a whole range of other people that I know that are very that I class as good friends and really knowledgeable. And in the end, my ideal is just to give my guys the same. I mean, someone said to me a while ago, you know, what's going to happen when you pass away? As well, that's entirely out of my hands, because I won't be around. But I'm just hoping that I've given the spark to all the other people to get what they desire out of it.
Yeah. Well, you've influenced so many, and especially more so in the community of Geelong and in that area. And I mean, some of the stories that again that go around, you know, was that the Melbourne, you know, in the 70s as such, you know, for the Hunchy Eddies and so forth, that would go to Geelong, you know, to you know, challenge you guys as such and train and work, you know, and so on. Are those the case back then? Was that the case back then?
Yes, I well remember we had probably the first knockdown tournament in Australia, in Melbourne somewhere. For the life of me, I can't remember where it was. Yeah. There was a team from Geelong, and there was a team from, there's me, Brian Ellison, Terry Wilson, a guy named Kemp Eo, and Brian Cole. That was the Geelong team, and we actually won on the day, but the fights were really, really hard. It was just one of those days we all came back injured, and, you know, but you had a good time, enjoyed it, and you'd get over the injuries and get back to training. Funnily enough, I remember my very first grading was under Shihan Eddie. So he came down to Geelong for the day, and in those days you had to actually stand out in front of him one at a time. Right, so there's about 10 of us in the class getting graded. One guy gets up, stands out the front, and he says, do this and do that. And whatever. Okay, sit down. Next guy up, do this, do that. So anyhow, when we got to the kata, I always remember I was nervous as bloody hell, and it's my very first grading, and I had to do Yansu, and I completely stuffed it up. Finished up facing the wrong way. God knows what.
Yeah,
that's how the nerves can get you, and so I always appreciate that. People say, they're nervous. I keep saying, if you're not nervous or frightened before a knockdown tournament, you're an idiot, because you should be. Courage isn't the absence of fear; it's just the ability to control it.
Oh yes, indeed. There you go. Oh, well, that's cool. Yeah, look at that. In a moment of realization, hey, again, in having the senior grade, and it's still to this day, when we get. When I went through gradings and my students, we have the table up the front, for those that don't do Kyokushin as such that are listening, you have your kohai, which is your seniors. Have a table for example, here, and then, there is that element of surprise, and then there is the element of pressure as well as, as they say, shitting yourself.
I always say to anyone that's grading, look, we know how you feel. Because we've been where you are. We've been right there. We know what's going through your head right now because we've been there. And that's always a bonus for everybody.
Yeah.
Once again, we would never ask anyone to do something that I haven't done or couldn't do.
Yeah. I mean, you from the group that you've built and controlled and run and so forth. You also, again, the experience that you've had in being in one of the first ever world tournaments representing Australia and so on. What is your, how is your feeling and direction with, I guess, is it always going to be full contact karate as a forefront leader of Kyokushin, or is it slowly becoming, because of the change in what the seniors say, things have changed, times have changed, it's not as hard as it used to be? Is there starting to become more of a self-defense teaching component? What are you feeling when you hear that from a young lad like me?
Look, there are some that say, that's the way to go, and good luck to them. But as far as I'm concerned, there's only one way to do it. That's a hard way. For example, I only say what I do. Right? When we first started my branch, said, right, nothing's going to change. I'm going to do the gradings the same way we've always done it. That is 40 fights for black belt, unless you're of an age where you can't do that, or females if they don't want to do it. But I've always said that no watering it down, no breaks, no. And the other thing is padding. Padding, people wearing padding just drives me absolutely crazy, because nowhere on God's earth did Sosai ever allow padding in Honbu. Even if you were injured, you didn't wear it. So if you're doing a grading, you front up, nothing on your legs, nothing on your hands, just get in and do it. And funnily enough, for example, I remember a guy in a World Cup actually won it a while ago, and then we saw a photo of him, and he had a leg instep protector under his gi. You couldn't see it until he had his leg up. I said, that guy was so good, he didn't need that anyhow. Yeah. He had the ability on his own. Why take the soft approach? As you know, Kyokushin's hard. It's populated by hard men and hard women. I would have to say, in this age of female enlightenment, Kyokushin is truly a non-sexist organisation. The girls get it just as hard as the guys, and they love it that way. And there are some absolutely brilliant female fighters around.
Yes, no doubt. I think I've opened the can of worms there. So you definitely no, but that's great to hear. To be honest, like I said at the start, I'm trying to tap into the things that you're passionate about, that you've got, as your point of view and your, I guess, ways. And I appreciate you sharing that. Because as simple as it may sound, it's good to hear firsthand. And we follow the same protocols, of course, under Hanshi EDM, and there's no way we're getting away with anything. And that is the part for listeners to, again, like Shihancho just said, you can do it your way or you can do it the hard way. you know, we got to keep that going. So with that being said, you know, what continues to motivate you and push you, you know, with what's happening these days, you know? I mean,
okay, well,
thanks so much.
My motivation at the moment has, before COVID hit anyhow, luckily, I was given permission by Councillor Matsushima to attempt a grading for 8th Dan this year. So it was actually supposed to be happening this coming Tuesday in Bali. So we're all training. And I actually had a meeting with my guys and because I knew about it. I said, okay, so guys, this year the training is for me because I'm grading. The training's for me, and keep up if you can. That was my exact words. And then I started going around to a different dojo each night training, and the feedback I was getting was just fantastic. Everyone's loving it. Things are going terrific. And then and by the way, I also had Robbie Adams was going to do his 6th Dan, and I had 3 guys to do their Yondan.
Oh wow!
And then
big stuff.
So we're all training, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and bang, things just went in a hole. So we put that off. I said to a guy yesterday, we've got to just forget about 2020, and we'll reset for 2021.
Now, with respect, you don't have to.
I mean, that's my driving thing at the moment. I think I'm firstly, I was honoured that he would think that, but secondly, even for me, it's probably I'm probably going to be one of the first guys that's ever actually going to do an actual physical grading. Because at that level, you normally get it on what you've done for the organisation, how many students you've put through, and that sort of stuff. But Kancho Matsushima, again, sort of saying the difference sometimes, is always been a firm believer in if you want to grade, you got to test for it.
Well, I was about to, what I was saying is in respect of that, if you can share, not again, you don't have to share everything, but so you are going to be physically tested. So
yes.
Are you in a position to share, like, just in respect of it, what angle are you going to be graded on? I mean, I ask this respectfully.
I'm going to be in the grading like everyone else. You have to do physical exercises. The only allowance he makes is for your age. So, if some people have got to push a certain weight 30 times, I might only have to do it 10 times or a lighter weight or whatever. So you do a half an hour of physical exercises. We'll do all the basics. We'll do Ito Gecko. We'll do kata. So I think I counted there's about 52 kata I've got to do. And then at the end of that, I may or may not do any kumite depending on him and who's there. But 73, I'm getting a bit brittle.
Oh, that's inspiring stuff. I'm sure all of us listening here, that is inspiring stuff. No doubt about it.
As I said, because we had the last World Tournament in China, we had another guy, a guy from Canada, did the same thing. So I said to some of my guys, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me.
Oh, well.
And it gets away from, there are many people around, even in our organisation, who think they ought to get a grade for nothing. Just, they've been, the thing that really irks me, I've been training 5 years, it's time for another grading. We say, no, it's not how long you've been training, it's what you've done in that training time, And if you've just gone along, trained a couple of classes a week, then why should you get a grade?
Right.
So, and as I said, Kancho's philosophy is, if you want a belt, you got to earn it, and you got to get in there and have a go.
Well, congratulations, I guess, in the announcement of it, and continuation of this not being too much of an interruption for yourself, and to Shihan Robbie Adams as well for his 6 and your other team.
And
congratulations.
The other thing with me is that I'm really lucky, and I know there's a lot of people out there in the same situation, but I'm really lucky that I've got a wife who understands and who actually trained and got to a knee down, and the old saying, behind every guy there's a really good woman. It's really true with me. I didn't have Wendy, pushing me in the back, prodding me to do this and do that sometimes, then I wouldn't get it done. So it's a real big help that you don't have that situation where the partner doesn't like you going to training. I've always said Kyokushin is like a mistress. You know, the only problem is people know how to combat a mistress, but you can't bet Kyokushin because it's in your blood and you can't get it out.
No. Yeah. Well, there you go. And good on you for gesturing that, because it's, again, you know, I'm a case of it again, and seeing my mentors as well, you know, have beautiful partners and wives and their families in supporting the time and energy. And like I'm going through at the minute, you know, Ustal, I've got to go interview Shihancho here for an hour, and she's got the kids, and you know, it's yes. You know, don't get me wrong. Once this is done, I'm back on the book, so I've got to make sure the house is running well. Yeah. But yeah, it all adds up, doesn't it? It all adds up.
It certainly does, yes.
Yeah. Shihancho, you know, we've got about 5 or so minutes left. It's been a wonderful chat, and, you know, and you highlighting some of these things and teaching myself, and I'm sure others, you know, some really cool things in life, as well as, you know, what you've been through, you know, with 50 odd years of martial arts. Again, in putting it into an hour, you're going to end this chat and go, oh, I forgot to bring up all the above. And it always happens with my guests, which is cool. But, you know, over the next 5 minutes or so, you know, we've got a window here to just rehash and summarize, I guess, the highlights and the journeys of what you've been through. And, you know, I guess the biggest one that what I think I've written down here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you also were one of the first, again, in completing a 50-man kumite.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the first one in Australia was myself, Jimmy Phillips, Tony Bowden, and Luka Gurovic.
All right, you go.
Luke unfortunately has passed away, and
Rest in peace.
We did the 50-man, and Goda and Toshikazu Sato came out for it.
So in ending it on a note of unbelievable achievements here, the 50-man kumite, could you give us a bit of a finish off on how that was, what you were how you were training even for it, the commitment for it? I mean,
yeah, okay. Well, I'll start off with I was training 3 times a day, whether it was, you know, running basics, training at night, and obviously a lot of kumite and a lot of fitness work, and I got to the day I thought I was as fit as I'm ever going to be. Luckily, I was a good runner at school, and I've always enjoyed running, so that was all good. But I got to the day, so there was a grading before it, which I was taking part of it. So then we get to the fighting, and as a lesson for everyone in this, so I got to about 10 fights, and I'm starting to feel really tired and down, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to make this. I'm thinking to myself now, what the hell is wrong with you? You know, you're fit, but you've never been fitter. Why are you feeling like this? And I suddenly realised it was the way I was thinking, because I'm thinking, you know, 10 down, 40 to go. And that 40, my brain's saying, gee, Gary, that 40, that's a really hard ask. So I said to myself, okay, stop it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate on 5 fights. So all I did was worry about the 5 fights. Then I'd worry about the next 5 fights. And what happened? Everything picked up and I got through it at the end. So it was, one of those mental things I learned. I learned a lot that day about myself. And the fighting was just, as you'd expect, brutal and hard, and took me a while to get over. But once again, the feeling of satisfaction and joy after it is just indescribable. You know, I think I've always said to people, you know, the feeling you get after being successful in your showdown grading is indescribable. You can't just put a button on it and say, well, that's how I felt. The feeling after 50 man is just the same.
Oh, good on you. Well done in sharing a bit of that. Again, what an accomplishment and day that would have been, and in the history books as such, because it's something, I've got to be honest with everyone out there. I've even put it out to Shian Bill, and I'm on notice. I'll leave it at that for a 50
okay.
But in the traditional way, you know, black belts and so forth. But who knows? Who knows? Time will tell. You know,
I'll guarantee you'll enjoy the experience. Not so much when you're doing it, but afterwards.
No, but you again are inspiring to hear a snippet of that, and more so in just summarising this all. Congratulations on what all you've done, and this isn't a let's chat to Shihancho and then never see him again. This is just a starting point, you know. And I appreciate you sharing as much as you could in the time that we had and so forth, and getting that technology opportunity went well in the end.
It did indeed. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your time, Sensei.
Shihancho, a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations with everything. And thank you so much for sharing your time today with us all. Us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Everyone, take care.